21, verse 1, the widow's offering. Jesus looked up and he saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And he saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. And he said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them, for they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. All right, I told you I'd tell you a quick story, right? This right here, this is the copper coin that the widow threw in there. My wife tracked it down, not the exact one, obviously, but these coins. My wife tracked it down, and then for my anniversary, she made me, our wedding anniversary, she made me this bracelet with that coin right there that the widow, the little copper coin, threw in to the offering box. So yes, that bracelet does have a deeper meaning to it for me. I mean, it's directly related to this biblical story here, and I just thought it was a great gift from my wife and very thoughtful to do so. That's it. The rest of these bracelets, guys, they're pretty random. Some of them are gifts from fans. I always love when people come and give me different bracelets. This is one I scooped up in Hawaii. I think this one I picked up somewhere in Europe. So I kind of get them all throughout my travels. And the truth is, if you can't tell, my wrists are pretty big. And so they break quite often. And so I always got to get new ones. But it is what it is. Yeah, definitely considerate of my wife to think that. Anyways, guys. All right, so I'm going to keep it going here. To the very next thing. Did I get it all? Okay. So there you go. Little story there about my own personal bracelet based on that story right there about the widow and all that. But here we go. So we're in Luke 21, verse 5. Now Jesus is going to... I'll put this up there. Thank you, Alvin. Oh, thank you very much, guys. All right, so... Jesus foretells of the destruction of the temple. And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, quote, as for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And they asked him, Teacher, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when these things are about to take place? And he said to it, See that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand. Do not go after them. And when you hear of wars and tumults, or rumors of wars, do not be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. So if you guys know any history, Jesus... he resurrected around the year 33 AD, roughly, right? And in the year 70 AD, this very temple was totally destroyed and wiped away. Not one stone was left over. So what Jesus said here came true maybe about 35 years later, exactly. And this was a terrible time for the Jewish people and, of course, the early church and the early Christians. But this is exactly what Jesus was talking about. And he says, Then he said to them, Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and pestilences. And there will be terrors, and great signs from heaven. But before all of this, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and the prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. Settle it therefore in your minds not to meditate beforehand how to answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be delivered up even by parents and brothers and relatives, and some of you they will put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But not a hair on your head will perish. By your endurance you will gain your lives. Can you imagine hearing this, guys? Hearing these words straight from Jesus, him telling you this is what's about to occur. And you better believe, guys, we've got records of it all through history. This is what happened to the disciples and the early believers in the early church. They were tortured and killed and brutalized. They were put on, they were used as human torches to light the way to the castle or the temple. Nero, if you guys know anything about Nero and how he treated them, the Colosseum out in Rome, how they would just throw the Christians to the lions, and all of these things, guys, the early church went through, and as they tried to, that's right, they were fed to the lions. I mean, it's just nuts, guys, and so. This time period for these guys. And of course, Shirley says this is still relevant. It absolutely is. You can look at today and you can kind of look at how the world views Christianity and Christians and stuff like that. And the world is going to come against this message. And it's a shame. It really is a shame because it's such good news. But Jesus straight up says, they will hate you for my name's sake. And it just is what it is, guys. But the hearts of men can be cold and hardened, as the Bible says. But anyways, you can imagine at this time, the disciples hearing this, and wow, that had to be a heavy message to handle. And Jesus says this here in verse 20. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. So he's being very specific here. He's talking about Jerusalem. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out in the country enter it. For these days are of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. Alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days, for there will be great distress upon the earth, and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. You see it? You see it here? And this happened, guys. This is exactly how it went down, whatever year that was, 70 A.D. Shirley, thank you very much, Shirley. This was such an insane time for the early church. If you guys ever do any history, any searching of the history of the early church and how they were treated and the persecution and the fall of Jerusalem and how brutal the Gentiles as they killed all the Jews. Terrible, terrible time. Now, there's a relevance to today, and there will be for the future, of course. Everything said in the Word always has some eternal purposes here. But right here he's saying, these armies are going to surround Jerusalem, and, the end is coming for them. And he says, and there will be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will be fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Now here we have Misty, it's all good. Thank you. You good? Thank you, guys. Now we've got the lesson of the fig tree. And so he tells them this parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they come out in leaf, you see for yourselves, and you know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all has taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Powerful words from Jesus Christ right there. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Watch yourselves, he says. But watch yourself, lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the cares of this life. And that day will come upon you suddenly like a trap, for it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the whole earth. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all of these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. And every day he was teaching in the temple, but at night he went out and lodged on the mount called Olivet. And early in the morning all the people came to him in the temple to hear him. So at this point, Jesus has quite the audience, guys. He teaches in the temple. At night he goes and stays on the Mount of Olives. In the morning, everybody comes to hear him talk. They want to know what's going down, what's going to happen. And this is a reason, this is just a personal, let me just say, that is the end of chapter 21 right there. Now, we can look up all the history sources that talk about how this went down in the year 70 AD. The destruction of the temple, the Jews destroyed, the Christians taken, as you said, fed to the lions, used as torches, beheaded, tortured, tons of terrible things. Stuff we probably don't even have record of. But anyways, this is a reason I think that almost all of the books of the New Testament were written before 70 AD. Because if they were not, they would have written about it. They would have written about these things, what went down. And they would have just, because all it does is confirm everything Jesus says. But my thought is that all these letters were written beforehand. Otherwise, they would have just said, yeah, and that's exactly what Jesus said would happen. They could have easily put that in any one of their letters, but they didn't. So it's just my own take. I know there's a lot of scholars that might put things at different dates and stuff like that. Daisy, you agree with me? But just staying within the biblical context here, I'm thinking all of these New Testament things were written before this destruction of the temple.